Today, we're taking a look at the edgy masochist and sword freak of Bravely Default 2, the Hellblade. The Hellblade specializes in expending their own HP to apply strong elemental physical attacks onto a target that constantly assails them over time, while also balancing some incredibly powerful passive benefits with some crippling deaths if they fail to manage their own resources properly. High risks and high rewards. So, let's take a look at one of those risks. The Hellblade's first specialty, Deal with the Devil. This specialty will restore 8% of the Hellblade's max HP and MP at the end of each of their turns, but at the cost of dropping their BP down to -3 if they find themselves KO'd in battle at any point. So, you get a pretty potent HP and MP regen permanently at the cost of potentially crippling any momentum you might have had going if you die. No pressure! The Hellblade's second specialty is Strength in Adversity. When the Hellblade is dealt damage that is more than 25% of their max HP, their attack and defense stats will be raised by 10% for at least 3 turns. This passive buff is, surprisingly, very powerful, as not only does the Hellblade personally specialize in cutting their own HP like a hot knife through butter, but Strength in Adversity is one of the few buffs in the entire game to bypass various means of removing buffs, like Purge or Square One. Make use of this when it's available and just don't wait out its duration. It's really strong. The Hellblade's special move is Ruinga Sword. This is a powerful, non-elemental magic attack on all enemies with the bonus of raising the entire party's physical attack by 15%. Thanks to the Hellblade's very high physical and magical attack stats, you'll see some high damage from Ruinga itself. Then you can easily capitalize on the physical buff with your standard abilities. So, get cracking. Now we move on to the Hellblade's combat abilities, starting with their Elemental Blades. This is a good chunk of their combat skills, so hold on while I list them all off. We've got Ruby, Sapphire, Diamond, Carnelian, Emerald, Quartz, and Onyx Blades. These attacks are all identical in their functions, with the only difference being the element that they're tied to. So, I'll be going over all of them under the same term, Elemental Blades. When using an Elemental Blade, you expend 25% of your max HP to deal a powerful single-target physical attack of a specified element that will also apply a debuff on the target. This debuff will trigger 2 more hits of the exact same elemental attack you just did at set intervals, but it won't expend your HP. Each of these 3 hits act independently of each other, having their own chances of land critical hits, to make use of buffs and debuffs, or even to be blocked by an enemy's default. Up to 3 of these Elemental Blade debuffs can be on a target at the same time, essentially meaning that your Hellblade can directly deal 3 attacks immediately at the cost of 75% of their HP, and then have 6 more attacks come in over time. When looking at the potential damage you can deal, the Hellblade has almost no equal. But because these blades are focused on dealing passive, recurring damage over time, you'll need to make sure that you can keep a steady supply of buffs and debuffs rolling to help the Hellblade deal consistent damage. Knowing the weaknesses of your enemies is also crucial here, and applying new elemental weaknesses can be a godsend too. But now we move on to the other stuff at the Hellblade's disposal, like Dreadblade and Terrorize. Dreadblade will allow the Hellblade to attempt to inflict the Dread status ailment onto a target, which can restrict their ability to Brave and Default, let alone gain BP. A powerful status ailment on its own, especially if you're trying to reduce the chances of an enemy defaulting and blocking your incoming Elemental Blade damage. However, there is also another benefit, and that is where Terrorize comes into play. Terrorize will deal a significant amount of damage to a target suffering from the Dread status ailment, granting the Hellblade one of the few setups where you can apply and make use of an element in a single job hit. Personally, this combination is usually my go-to damage method on this job, with the Elemental Blades serving as a fallback, since the damage output of Terrorize is actually quite potent and fairly reliable. Next up is Minus Strike. The damage output of Minus Strike is equal to the amount of current HP missing from the Hellblade's maximum HP count. Since the Hellblade will often see themselves at low HP, you can definitely take advantage of Minus Strike frequently, but you should be mindful of the 1 BP cost and inherent limit of the damage capable of being done with the ability, because, HP cap and whatnot. Also, do be sure to get your health back as soon as possible, or you'll suffer the wrath of the Devil's Deal. We don't want that. Next is Death Throes. This ability will instantly apply the Doom status ailment onto the Hellblade. However, in exchange, they will receive a massive 50% boost to their attack and defenses. This benefit is tied to you receiving the Doom effect, so no cheating around this one by making yourself immune to Doom. If the Doom is removed, so are the buffs. Cheeky, I know. And do watch out for the Phantom's rewarding result passive, as triggering that with death throws weirdly only grants the attack boost, so if you want the defense one, stay away from that. Use this as either a Hail Mary to try and close out a fight, or as one of the main buff tools a Hellblade uses at the start of combat, aiming to win in just a few short turns. Offense can indeed be the best defense. Next up is Ultima Sword. This ability will consume all of the Hellblade's current MP to deal damage proportional to the amount of MP being used up for the Ultima Sword. There are some weird interactions with this ability, as any means of reducing the cost of this action, despite it using all of your MP, will reduce the damage output of Ultima Sword. So be sure to put away those from your Hellblade, like gold hairpins, for example, or MP save. Ultima Sword does scale off of your physical attack as well, so equipment and buffs can still have an effect on how much damage you deal, so be sure to equip yourself properly. Lastly, if you were to use the Red Mage's HP MP converter, Ultima Sword will instead scale off of the Hellblade's HP when determining its damage, which, due to how much HP the Hellblade has, can turn this combination into what is probably the easiest means of dealing the damage cap of 99,999 in the whole game, just at the cost of putting your own internal organs outside. And last up, for combat abilities is Deathstorm. When using Deathstorm, the user will use 10 random elemental blade attacks on all enemies, applying random blade debuffs to each target, and then sending the Hellblade's HP to 1, MP to 0, and BP to -3. Oh, and despite what the description says, these attacks are physical, just like the elemental blades. It's a translation error. This can be the only move you take on this user's turn. Deathstorm is kind of a mixed bag, as it just kind of sacks all of your stats for what can range from absolutely pitiful damage to pretty decent in the best of circumstances. You can avoid the BP cut by having Dread applied to the user, but the HP and MP cuts will still go through. So if you intend to use Deathstorm in any serious way, be sure to have an instant heal plan, or else the devil's gonna become collecting some debts. Now we move on to the Hellblade's passive abilities, starting with Surpassing Power. This passive is super easy to understand, as it unlocks the damage cap for its user from being 9,999 to 99,999. This cap raise does not affect anything else other than damage. So, unfortunately, no healing for 100,000 HP. Sorry, it disappointed me too. And the other passive at the Hellblade's disposal is Last Resort. This passive will raise the damage of its user as their HP progressively gets lower. This buff can be pretty ridiculous, and because the Hellblade will often drop their own health to deal damage, Last Resort and Strength in Adversity can both act as powerful damage buffs alongside death throws, turning your Hellblade into an insane glass cannon of a job. The Hellblade has some interesting skills and a gameplay loop unlike anything we've seen before, meaning that we can either play safe, or try to make this job more of a conventional attacker, or really lean into some of its gimmicks. The Freelancer and Beastmaster are examples of the latter, where their powerful base stat buffs can help raise the Hellblade's already high stats to help them deal more damage and take hits that would have otherwise killed them at lower HP thresholds. The Freelancer's stand ground can also be a godsend for keeping you alive at 1 HP as you keep spamming those elemental blades. But the Beastmaster's high stat gain can ensure that you close out fights faster than you can say Fashionable. The Salvemaker is mostly here to help supply healing elixirs for any Ultima Sword builds that you decide to go for. As with HP MP Converter and Surpassing Power, sending Ultima Sword then just instantly healing with a concocted elixir is an easy 100k in 2 actions. And the Swordmaster is a personal pick of mine, where you spend your first set of turns sending out some elemental blades of your choice, and then your follow-up turns use conventional attacks with the Drain Attack passive equipped to deal damage to regain your HP. Rinse and repeat as needed. It's pretty potent, even if it isn't doing the most damage. The Hellblade is a strong, fun, and unique job that toys with death unlike any other job in Bravely Default 2, specializing in teetering the edge just enough to get some crazy damage out on an enemy without completely losing it all to the devil. It has a strong line of base stats, granting it access to acting as a variety damage dealer or HP sponge. and it has access to every element in the game, which few jobs can boast about. My biggest gripe with the job is when you get it, as the Hellblade is acquired during the last third of the game, where, frankly, I think it's at its weakest. Using the Hellblade well requires either very specific builds or a bit of patience and luck, which the latter portions of the story don't take kindly to. Hurdling is heavily punished. Trying to just beat bosses as fast as possible is usually what you need to do, and because the Hellblade focuses on doing recurring damage, you might struggle if you try to just use it traditionally. While it lacks a good first impression in my opinion, the Hellblade is still one hell of a job that provides a unique and fun path to victory few jobs can provide. And now onto the fashion tier list. The Hellblade outfit puts a lot of emphasis on the various jewels and crystals found on the dark armor, along with sporting a tattered cape on the back to really complete the already edgy design. On paper, this is a really cool outfit, and I do actually really like this concept. But unfortunately, similar to the Vanguard, I feel like the Hellblade design suffers when being translated from concept art to in-game design. There is just something about it that just really feels off, like the heads of the party were just kind of superglued onto some early 2000s high school kid's geology assignment. I see the vision, so it gets a high C tier, but I don't think I can give it anything higher than that.